The difference, he says in paragraph 4, between landscape and landscape is small, but there is great difference in the beholders. The beauty in the eye of the beholder is where he's gesturing, obviously. There's nothing so wonderful in any particular landscape as the necessity of being beautiful, under which every landscape lies. Nature cannot be surprised and undressed. Beauty breaks in everywhere. In other words, he says if you have the right capacity to look at nature, you will always see beauty there. Why? Because it's natural. It's natural. Paragraph 5, he continues. But it's very easy, he says, to outrun the sympathy of readers on this topic. He's conceding a point. He's aware that some people, by the end of the 4th paragraph, may start to roll their eyes and go, oh, please, you tree hugger types. Are you serious with me about going on about the silly sunset? There is no beauty in a sunset. It's kind of all silly and dumb. What is wrong with you? He's aware that there are going to be readers who kind of respond this way. And so he's going to concede a point in paragraph 5. It's very easy to outrun the sympathy of readers on this topic, which schoolmen call natura naturata, or nature passive. Right? He says he says one can hardly speak directly of it without excess. He says the minute I start talking about trees, I kind of start to run to excess. Frivolity, he continues, is a most unfit tribute to Pan, who ought to be represented in the mythology as the most continent of gods. I would not be frivolous before the admirable reserve and prudence of time. Yet I cannot renounce the right of returning often to this old topic. This is, of course, his tipping of the hat to remind readers that 8 years prior, he wrote already on this topic of nature. And now he says, I can't help myself. Here I am back again, writing on my favorite subject, namely nature. The multitude of false churches accredits the true religion. Literature, poetry, science are the homage of men to this unfathomed secret. We want to write that down. Unfathomed secret, concerning which no sane man can affect an indifference or incuriosity. Nature is loved by what is best in us. It's loved as the city of God, although, or rather, because there is no citizen. Of course, his reference here to city of God is St. Augustine's classic text. In other words, there is St. Augustine's understanding of the city of God, namely, of course, the Christian faith. And then for Emerson, there's going to be this even more important city of God, the world of nature and appreciation of that world. In paragraph 6, he continues by beginning, but taking timely warning and leaving many things unsaid on this topic, let us no longer omit our homage to the efficient nature, natura naturnus, the quick cause, before which all forms flee, as the driven snows, itself secret, it works driven before it in flocks and multitudes, as the ancient represented nature by Proteus, a shepherd, and in indescribable variety. The question, of course, is going to be, where does all of this come from? We, he says, know nothing rightly for want of perspective. It's a long way, he says, from granite to the oyster, farther yet to Plato and the preaching of the immortality of the skull, yet all must come as surely as the first Adam has two sides. He continues in paragraph 7, motion or change and identity or rest are the first and second secrets of nature. Motion and rest. So we want to write that one down. For Emerson, this is always going to be a fascinating question. And it's also going to be the question of the American philosopher Ken Wilber. We've pointed this out already as a line. His opening lines in Sex, Ecology, Spirituality, a classic idea. Why is there something instead of nothing? And then he makes the observation, there are two answers to this question. One answer is what he calls philosophy of oops. Don't ask. Right? Because if, for example, you postulate the Big Bang, you still have to ask the question and try to answer it. Well, where did the stuff that created the Big Bang come from? Right? This is what Wilber will mean by the philosophy of oops. And he calls it a kind of childlike, childish, and foolish kind of way to answer the question. Rather, he says, it's there, nature. We got to ask the question, from whence does this nature come? Where's this energy come from if it's neither created nor destroyed? And Emerson will now begin to play the game. He says every shell on a beach is a key to it, he says. He continues now in paragraph 8 that nature is always consistent. And he continues now by saying the following. If we look at her work, nature, we seem to catch a glance of a system in transition. This is the evolutionary view of Emerson's view of nature. Plants are the young of the world, vessels of health and vigor, but they grope ever upward toward consciousness. The trees are imperfect men, and seem to bemoan their imprisonment rooted in the ground. The animal is the novice and probationer of a more advanced order. The men, though young, having tasted the first drop from the cup of thought, are already dissipated. The maples and ferns are still uncorrupt, yet no doubt, when they come to consciousness, they too will curse and swear. A bit of irony here, right? Everything is about going forward, evolving. Flowers so strictly belong to youth that we adult men soon come to feel that their beautiful generations concern us not, and we have not our day. Now let the children have theirs. The flowers jilt us, and we're old bachelors with our ridiculous tenderness. Paragraph number 9, he continues, if we consider how much we are nature's, we need not be superstitious about towns, as if that terrific or benefic force did not find us there also in fashioned cities. Nature's, who made the mason, made the house. In other words, put it in your notes, everything is interconnected, right? Everything is interconnected for Emerson. Paragraph number 10, the guiding identity, he says, runs through all the surprises and contrasts of the piece and characterizes every law. Man carries the world in his head, the whole astronomy and chemistry suspended in a thought, because the history of nature is charactered in his brain. Therefore is he the prophet and discoverer of her secrets. Every known fact in natural science was divined by the presentment of somebody before it was actually verified. A man does not tie his shoe without recognizing laws which bind the farthest regions of nature. Moon, planet, gas, crystal, are concrete, geometry, and numbers. Emerson would have difficulty with the student who says, I really like math, but I hate history. I really like art, but I hate science. Emerson wouldn't understand a view like that, because he says when you're studying biology, you're studying art. When you're studying history, you're studying math. I mean, think about this. If you're messing with Pythagoras and his famous little theorem, a squares and b squares and c squares, are you not studying history? Because before there was a Pythagoras theorem, there had to be a Pythagoras. And Pythagoras was simply an individual who sat around thinking about the beauty of harmonics. That's where all of his stuff came from, his study of music. If you're doing music, you're doing math. If you're doing math, you are doing English, literature. What are you talking about? No, of course, language itself is a form of mathematics, which is why we use certain words in certain order. If we speak those words out of order, somebody will say there's something wrong. Even when you tie your shoes, you are witnessing some kind of strange law, which is fascinating. For Emerson, this is all somehow interconnected. And this realization, can we call it an insight? Dare we even call it an epiphany? This insight or this epiphany is going to radically transform the way you think. It certainly did Emerson's greatest student, Henry David Thoreau, who will read an essay like this and say, you know what, I think he's dead on right. I spent all my life to this point worrying about the silliness in the first box, and I don't know the first thing about Ruthie's tree. Of course, he wasn't speaking about Ruthie's tree in the first box. He was far more interested in Ruthie's tree in the second box. Well, thank you. We'll come back here in a minute to finish our conversation.